Shalom, my name is Kasha Kaya, and today I'll be going into the Proverbs 31 Identity as a Woman. I am coming out of my composition book because I already have the notes that I want. So I'm going to focus on this just to not get too off track. So without further ado, let's get started. In going into Proverbs 31, we're going to be going into the importance of establishing yourself as a woman, having feminine charisma. It's so important as a young woman, as just a woman in general. Doesn't matter where you're starting or how young or old you are, to just know how to establish yourself as a woman so that you can be grounded, that when that next level does present itself for you in life, you can then level up easily. It's not such a hassle. You won't have any problems with anything. So this will be going into having an identity for yourself, and that will be going into personality, knowing yourself, knowing what you like and what you don't like, knowing how to present yourself, knowing how to dress yourself, take care of yourself, do self-care, maintenance, all of that, but also on a deeper level, in the spiritual, which is your spiritual fruits. How are you in general? You don't want to be kind of like like just rugged, like a tomboy or something. We don't want to be tomboys. Like, we want to be, soft, gentle, well-spoken, articulate. We want to know our emotions while we're feeling that way, and just know ourselves inside and out. But we're going to get to that part about articulation. Dressing yourself up, having your signature color schemes that look good on you, outfits that you like, knowing how to do your hair up in different styles that make you feel confident, and just keeping that overall consistency in self-care. The Proverbs 31 woman, she was an amazing woman before she even became a wife and a mother, and that's what we want to strive to be. Now, granted, disclaimer, even if you've already entered into those seasons of life and you're just trying to rebrand yourself, or you're just really trying to find yourself, even if you never felt like you found yourself, you can totally do that. And again, the Proverbs 31 woman, she knew herself. She knew what she would like. She knew what she wanted. She knew she had goals and aspirations for herself. She had boundaries for herself, principles that she held those boundaries to other people as well. She had principles about herself. She overall just had ambition for life, and just being as outstanding as she can, or just being herself. She had her own personality. Whether that's introverted or extroverted, you really can't, a woman can dial herself down on either of those sides. Of course, you just don't want to be sloppy in anything, or you don't want to come off as too nonchalant and I don't care. But it's a balance. Whatever personality she has, she's got her own look. She got a couple of looks. So because this Proverbs 31 woman, she knew herself as a woman. She was pretty established. She took care of herself, what she ate, her body. As I said, she looked presentable. She had healthy coping mechanisms in life. Whether that's going out, taking a walk in the park. She wouldn't have these bad habits. Even if she did have any, she would, be working on that. But when she goes into wifery, being in wifehood, being a wife, then since she had so much of her cup filled up by herself, she could pour into a man correctly, without being burnt out, catering to whatever he needed in a partner. If he put her in charge of, I don't know, like, I'm gonna just be coming off the top of my head with a lot of this stuff, but if he put her in charge of like managing and handling the finances, she could do that because she was smart and competent enough in herself to do it. Or if he talked about, oh, I got this business idea, that woman, she would do her own research if she didn't know anything. So that can get done. Anything she wanted to do, anything they wanted to do together. So she would help and support her husband in that. And day in and day out, the daily routine tasks of cooking, keeping the house picked up, maybe he's got like long shifts and whatnot. So she's got his back because she loves to cater to him and do that for him, and take that stress off of his mind. But then again, to even have those skills, she had that already herself before she, even became a man's wife or, etc., like cooking, cleaning, just knowing how to manage a house. This woman, she wasn't messy herself before she met someone. She always stayed on top of really everything, honestly, especially with her relationship with the Most High God. So now she can cover her husband in prayer. Now she can fast and just, give alms deeds, and, she can bring all of these things, these good things in for her household and for her husband, because ultimately she is a representation of her husband. Like when other people see her, they gonna know, oh, that's such and such wife, and just by the wife, people can see how the house moves, because I don't want to say the wife is the heart of the home. It's basically both the man and the wife, but the wife is the one who is like just really keeping the home going in a sense, with whatever every need possible. But yeah, so that's the Proverbs 31 woman as a wife. She was a suitable helpmeet. She was apt to help her husband. And then going into motherhood, of course, children will come in her marriage, but she would also be apt to raise those children up, to teach them and whatnot. If she, even in her times of being really tired, during, or just going through the, just the natural waves of having children, like postpartum and whatnot, even through that, she still rejoiced in the Most High because she was thankful to be just in that position. And she also knew that that storm, it wouldn't last forever. This woman, she also knew to ask for help. Like, she wasn't scared to ask for help, more assistance, and whatever she needed. Of course, in motherhood, like, you're kind of tied to your child for a bit of time, especially if you're breastfeeding. So she wouldn't mind asking for help. This woman also, if she could give, she would give to other women as well, and she would be that help for them. She would come to their house. She wouldn't just ask give me your baby, and you can go do all your own chores. No, she would be the one to bring food and dinner over, because she knew whatever woman it is, she didn't want her to have to go through that and get up and cook, or take care of house duties. So she would go over whoever's house and help them do laundry, cook, clean, take care of the children, do their hairstyles, whatever does need to get done. Give her some time to take care of herself. She was this well-rounded woman, so she's of course like that in her own walk of motherhood as well. And this is just going to be a quick overview in a sense. It's not really going to be really detailed, but I'm just naming all the characteristics and attributes of this woman, of her life, as I can. So it'll be quick. But in the topic of marriage and motherhood, again, this woman, she didn't lose herself. Like she preserved that self-maintenance and that self-care throughout that hard season of her life as well. Like I said, she rejoiced in it, and she didn't lose herself. So she would, still do her best to just stay on top of, her hygiene, taking care of herself, any responsibilities around, eventually she would get back into, taking care of her body and whatnot after postpartum. And since this woman already radiated so much confidence, like when she brings her children up, she can also install that into them as well. So not only would she practically teach her children life skills as they grow up and older, but she would instill that just self-confidence. Like, she would, she might tell them to, say a few, words of encouragement to themselves in the mirror. She teaches them, hey, it's important to keep up with yourself and keep your environment clean, etc., because that's how you show love to yourself, and that's how you fill your cup up. And also going in teaching her children, just training them up in the way that a child should go. She's teaching them why they should do something a certain way. She's not just telling them to do something and just saying, oh, because I said so. But it's also like why you should do this, why you should care to do this on your own. And that way they're more likely to keep the lesson if you just burn that in their ears. If you just burn that in their ears throughout the years, they're gonna grow up and they're gonna know, hey, this is why I'm doing that. They're gonna use their own critical thinking skills for just all aspects of life. So that's also how that woman is with her children. She cares enough to pour into them how they need to be, keeping it real. But of course, being loving as well. And going into this mindset of the Proverbs 31 woman, we rewire your way of thinking to the standard, even if you weren't brought up in that. Past a certain age, like, you gotta stop. You can acknowledge your traumas and why you respond to things certain ways, but you can't just, oh, that's the way I am. I'm 32 years old, I'm 28, I'm 48 years old, and this is why, this is why I still am the way I am, because what happened to me when I was 9 or when I was 16. It's like at some point you do have to acknowledge your traumas and then work on them and then learn how to correctly respond to things, so that won't just like stay with you throughout life. Because this Proverbs 31 woman, heck, this mindset, even if you have went through trauma in your past, you actively work on that and you work towards overcoming it. It doesn't stick with you, so now you can't be a feminine, vibrant woman that you need to be. You're like, or you're just like, I'll never trust no man no more, or all man ain't nothing, or just spewing out all this negativity. But this woman, she's healed, and she's here to, like, she not only pours into herself, but she's also here to pour into other people wholeheartedly. She loves it. She's passionate and she's dedicated. So, okay, this is my favorite part, because I feel like I'm still working on this, honestly, but learning how to effectively communicate through articulation, tone, body language, bringing life to your conversations. How do you do that? You do it through eye contact. You do it through head tilts, smiling, gestures with the hands, keep it below the shoulders. They don't have to like be dramatic or anything, but nodding, just learning how to go through a conversation lively, like don't just sound dead in a conversation. You want to be able to, like I said, with this woman, the mindset is to pour life into people. Don't be a dread. Don't be like, ugh, don't be a drag. Don't be a dreadful, have a dreadful spirit. So it is important for us to learn how to communicate, because even just in life in general, with your coworkers, in marriage, with your children, how are you gonna succeed in those if you can't even communicate what you want or what's wrong, or just good things in general. So, and again, this woman is no longer being triggered by trauma. She's no longer being chained by those traumas, and she has put the work in to correctly respond to whatever situation in a mature manner. So this woman also sets boundaries in her blood, platonic and romantic relationships. So whether that be with family or with friends, co-workers, or in romantic relationships, this woman, she sets boundaries. A person cares about themselves when they say, no, this is too much for me, or this is crossing the line for me. I won't tolerate that. That's kind of keeping yourself and your energy, your spirit from just, being drained and pulled by an outsource, so you put the gate there, you cut the line, like, I'm not dealing with this. So this woman holds boundaries to herself as well with, just everyone. Now, of course, she will extend grace, I would say, especially in her marriage, right, with her husband. She will extend grace, but even then, she will effectively communicate if she is not okay with something, or she sees something to not be righteous, but it will be like in a feminine sense. One of the last points is going into this woman balances being gentle and warm also with being competent and logical. So just because she's a sweet, nice, feminine soul doesn't mean she's stupid or anything. She still knows how to do things. She's also a businesswoman. If you read Proverbs 31, the whole chapter, especially after verse 10 on down to 31, this woman, she knew how to get out there, and she knew how to negotiate. She knew how to, just work her way through the business world and the marketing world with selling and whatnot. She was an entrepreneur. So, and even in that, what helped her a lot, not only was she a woman, maybe because, pretty privileged, but she was, like I said, gentle, and she was loving. She just gave that off to everybody. And we now are reaching the end. So the results of having an identity, love, trusting of self, proactive in life goals. She doesn't procrastinate, openly loving and expressing, uplifting towards others, and not seeking external validation. Because this woman, she holds all of these traits because she is validated. She knows her self-worth. She knows that her work is good, and she is validated by herself and by the Most High God. Trust heavily in the Most High God. Can't leave that out. But the water so much. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. I will see y'all in the next one. Peace. Shalom.